talk a little bit about what the Blue Jays are bringing back this year on offense and what people should watch out for in North Jackson.
Well, we talked about Western Reserve having a tale of two seasons last year. So did the Blue Jays. They seem like two completely different teams on their way to their 6-3 record, which was a very, very successful season in Blue Jay standards and knocking off rival Western Reserve last year too. And a part of that team was their offense was 28, just over 28 points per game that they averaged. It was in the top 25 in the area. But the thing is, they're only returning a couple of starters on that offense, and that is going to be Chase DeDominic is going to be their offensive lineman. Jake Gross, also offensive lineman. Gerald Ihrig is going to be their tight end junior that's coming back, and Ethan Evans is going to be coming back. He's a phenomenal athlete as well. But, I mean, you're losing Mike French off of the offensive line. Cole Grope, their wide receiver, is no longer there. Noah Kramer, another one of those athletes. Aaron Landis is no longer there. Frank Prosey's no longer there. And Logan Pugh's no longer there. So, I mean, you lost a lot of starters, 9, I think, in total. It's going to be hard to kind of come back, but you just kind of hope if you're Jackson Milton and you know, we know Coach over there pretty well. But it looks like that this team needs to really hope that these younger guys that they had come along in the season really kind of develop and step into that next role, because they really kind of need to for Jackson Milton not to miss a beat, I think, this season. But, I mean, who knows, too, because Coach Brode over there does a great job. I think this is his 5th season going into to coaching. So if anyone can have this team right and ready after a very successful season, I mean, hey, he was able to get the team back up there. I think he'd be able to keep it going.
And this is a Jackson Milton program that struggled for a long time, a lot of years of just struggling. And then in 2019, they won 5 games, felt like they left some on the table, came back and won 1 more game in 2020 with 6. They're going to have to keep taking that step as a program, and they want to keep taking that step. And I think they absolutely can keep taking those steps. They've definitely garnered the respect of some people in the area. They have some newfound confidence within the program, and I feel like a winning culture is back in Jackson Milton, which is half the battle.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it stretches amongst all sports, too. We saw how successful they did in baseball this year, as well as basketball, winning a playoff game again against Western Reserve in the playoffs. So, I mean, Jackson Milton has been able to consistently, at least on the boys' side of things, been able to handle their rival Western Reserve fairly well. And it's going to be interesting to see this year if they take that next step, too. With losing a lot of starters, it feels like they're taking a step back, but can they still take a step forward? And what I mean by that is just stay competitive. Can they stay competitive and not take that step back, be around that 5-6 win mark still? And anything I think more than that is going to be icing on the cake. And I think it is possible for this Jackson Milton team. And I think the greatest thing about this Milton offense is that nobody knows what to expect right now.
Oh yeah, that's kind of like, if you have them week 1, which we're going to break down their schedule in a little bit, you have to be sitting there like, what are they going to bring to the table? You know, what do we got? You're going to try to scramble to find their scrimmage tape, but they're probably not going to show too much in their first or second scrimmage. So as an opposing coach, you're just going to be like, okay, we have to adjust on the fly and do whatever they adjust to whatever they bring out on offense.
And I mean, you don't know if they're going to be run heavy, if they're going to be pass heavy. We don't know what their whole situation is. We know that they had guys contending for certain spots too, and we don't know of anything for sure yet. I don't believe so, but it will be interesting going forward, seeing what guys they have in place and what kind of team they're going to be going forward this year.
A next step would be 7 wins for the Blue Jays. They won 5-19, 6-20. Next step is 7. I think that's a very reasonable goal for the football team to have to keep taking those steps.
I absolutely think so as well. And I mean, just to stay competitive, and yeah, if you're around that 5, 6, 7 win mark, I mean, if you could take that next step, I mean, that would be tremendous too, because then that just shows that these younger guys really did buy into the system and learned a lot from the older seniors that were there last year, and they were ready to step up and fill those shoes.
And we'll talk about their schedule in a little bit, but I think, just kind of previewing it, the one game that they probably circled last year that they felt like they could have at least played better in and had a better showing is that Mineral Ridge game where they got blown out of the water. I feel like they might be looking at that game. They might have that score posted in the locker room and think this year that's not going to happen to us again when we play Mineral Ridge.
Well, yeah, you got to look at that. And I mean, the score was a 45-0 victory, too. And I mean, it was at Jackson Milton, of all places, too. So, I mean, you look at that and no, you can't be happy at all with how that turned out because you felt like you could have played a lot better throughout that entire game. And it really was just in that second quarter where it was it kind of just turned haywire, it seemed like, for the Blue Jays as they kind of were keeping it even keel that whole game around. It was scoreless for a long time, and then Mineral Ridge just started taking off, and then before you know it, it was over. And it was one of those games too. It started happening, and then the snowball effect just happened, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was just a night where it happens to a lot of teams, and every team I think experiences at least one game in sports where it was just like it's mentally draining after a while, and it's like. You just don't want to be there. You want to get the game over with and you want to go home. But, I mean, it sits with you, and it's been sitting with them for a year now, and they've been wanting to get back to Ridge. And I think this game being at Ridge, too, I believe, is what's on their docket. They go to Mineral Ridge this year. It's going to be fun seeing this matchup again because the Blue Jays should be ready for this matchup this time.
Perfect segue into their schedule. Break down what the Blue Jays have standing in front of them.
Well, right now, Jackson Milton, it looks like open is what it says for August 20th. I don't know. Did they find an opponent yet for that?
Not to my knowledge.
I believe they were looking for an opponent. They might have one. We'll have to stay tuned on that. But their first game is open. But then August 27th is at Newton Falls. September 3rd is home versus Wyndham. September 10th, home versus Western Reserve. 17th at Lowville. 24th at Sebring. October 1st at Mineral Ridge, 8th versus Waterloo at home, October 15th at Springfield, and October 22nd home versus McDonald. I mean, we talked about that Mineral Ridge game. October 1st, too. It's a Week 7 game, and it's at Mineral Ridge. This is the rematch from last year that I guarantee you the Blue Jays have been wanting for a long time now.
Big closeout game at home, too, against McDonald, bringing them into Jackson Milton. I mean, that might be a make-or-break game for Jackson Milton teetering on a playoff spot.
And it very well could be. I mean, by that time, it could be – we don't know where their schedule, obviously, and where their record's going to be. But, yeah, with the teams that they have prior to, I mean, before that, you're looking at you got to face Western Reserve, you got to face Lowville, Newton Falls, Wyndham, Sebring, and then that first game, I believe, is still open. So it's going to be interesting to see where they stand, and they might have a few wins under their belt, quite a few too. I mean, you're looking at those first 5 games with the open one. Those first 5 games: Newton Falls, Wyndham, Western Reserve, Lowville, Sebring. Excuse me. Those are you could come out 3-2. I could see them coming out 3-2, possibly 4-1. But at the same time, if games like that Mineral Ridge one happen where it snowballs, they can be 2-3, 1-4. That's the thing with this team. Nobody, like we said, nobody really knows what to expect. But I think that's the exciting part about this team, and that's why I'm excited to see what the Blue Jays have to offer.
With the second half of their schedule, they definitely don't want to have too deep of a hole to climb out of after 5 games.
No, you can't. You can't really afford to go into that slide because it goes right after Mineral Ridge. You go to Waterloo, or your home versus Waterloo, but you close out that season at Springfield, home versus McDonald, and those are 2 very tough games and 2 teams that are going to be looking to be competing for the top of the Scarlet Tier division, or Scarlet Tier, conference of the MVAC. I think that those 2 games, back-to-back at Springfield, home versus McDonald, those are going to be games, too, where playoff might be on the line, and you need to take one of them.
Well, that would be a daunting task if you said, hey, we got Springfield, McDonald. One is a must-win. We have to do one or the other. I mean,
it makes for great football, and it makes for 2 weeks of football that I definitely would want to see.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the mental strain if McDonald and Springfield are locked into a playoff spot, and then all of a sudden Jackson Milton needs that game badly just to get into the playoffs.
And they could play spoiler in their own division.
Oh man, that's when it gets kind of murky a little bit.